the idea of a subject matter as some kind of an offline contrived learning experience rather than a resource for the support of the pursuit of something that's engaging and interesting. Yeah, but that's what I mean, it's like a simple example of this for me has always been one approach is to say, here's what Newton discovered about gravity, right? But the real challenge is, how is it that we create an environment that the individual lives the question, why doesn't the moon fall? That it becomes their question, not because Newton said it, but because somehow we've developed in environments that help precipitate that question be alive, that it should be alive in that person. And that it's that kind of a dynamic that if we're going to intentionally, because now you're talking about curriculum, is there a value for specific interventions towards some common body of knowledge, body of experience? I think that's a big, broad discussion that we need to go into. But we can't get at it unless we're concerned with the learner's capacities for learning at the level that I think we're trying to get at now. Then we can talk about what particular issues are important, what particular subject matters are important. And then when we discover what particular subject matters are important, then we can start to ask the question, given that, and given our concern for the learner's capacities for learning, how can we create entirely different kind of environments that attract and allow this living question to form, which will become part of the drive that allows learners to move through those things we think are important. And then for the rest of the curriculum, it's like you've described. I mean, they've totally got to be authentic within them. That's exactly you're exactly right on the edge of the reason we need to talk about technology now, because there's no way to conceive of the relationship that's implied in your question, okay, can only be addressed by an environment that is so dexterous in its responsivity, while at the same time connected to the quote-unquote curriculum objectives, so as to facilitate the curriculum objectives at the one hand, and without it being at the expense of the meaning need movements of the learners on the other. Well, you're going to have to wait till after lunch, I think. Oh, really? Well, then maybe we should.
You had to go through the process. I think this is what's critical, though.
I can show a couple things about the technology.
Yeah, show a little bit just to whet your appetite.
Okay. I'm going to just, on account of that, jump out of. There's a few more pieces I'd like to drop before I actually go too far into the technology, but I will just jump to the technology at this point. Call this overall system Electronic Publishing for Learning. We'll come back to and travel into more detail after lunch about what this is and how it works. And I'm just going to jump to a mode of showing it without explaining it, okay, so you get some flavor. And I'll explain the richness of how it works and where its values lie at more after lunch. I do have to make a couple of disclaimers just for myself real quickly. The right side, what we're looking at is a screen that will ultimately be something you hold in your hand. And so the right side bar here will be things that you use your thumb on. At the moment, it runs on Macintosh computers and will soon run on, this is a prototype that runs on Macintosh computers, and will soon, once we get this developed into full product, run on any kind of computer. It's designed to respond entirely to meaning needs at a series of different levels. One is what we call the reference level, or the elemental level, the word, term, phrase, acronym, place level. The other one is the representational level. So let me give you an example. I'm in the central thread. That's what this logo kind of indicates right now. I'm going down the central tube of this earth science textbook, and I'm in the little bit about gravity. And as I move through here, I decide that this particular explanation of gravity is not very satisfying. And so I click on the word gravity. This lights up to say, I have some quick references available. When I click on this, there we go. Then a screen splits, and in this case, encyclopedia on gravity pops up. I can pop this up real fast and look at it. Or immediately put it down and move right along, like so. I can travel into basically anything on the surface that's a word, term, phrase, acronym, place with that kind of what we'll call referential dexterity. So that if I encounter something at that elemental level that I go like so on, it doesn't continue to work for me, I can very quick indicate it as such and move along. Now this will engage at many different levels. I mean, sometimes that's a encyclopedia or a dictionary. Sometimes it's a movie, right? Sometimes it's a sound and fact. There's a series of different classes of references, which I'm not going to get a chance to really go into until after we get out of here later. After we get back to it after lunch. Sorry about that. Higher? That better? Okay. So, and again, there's a lot of depth to this we're not going to get into right now. I'm just going to touch on it. This is what we call the situationally relevant reference part. The ability to take anything that's occurring on the surface and jump down underneath the surface and get whatever support's necessary at many different levels or distinctions of reference support so that I can pop right back up and keep moving. Or I can travel off, but let's put that aside as a secondary issue. In addition to this, the other level of the system is representational. And this deals with, and again I'm going to come back to this in greater detail later, representations. This is the conductive, the more metaphoric. And again, we'll get into that later. And I just decided, well, no, I'd look at the same intentional meaning about gravity, but now I'm going to look at it from the perspective of the personalities that participated in its development. That's what this logo indicates. So now this is essentially meaning the same things at the same bandwidth, if you will, that the earlier piece did. But this now notice that the menu, the situational menu, is different according to what's actually available to support the particular inquiry right now. So it's not a generalized menu. That's, of course, being a biography. Okay. I'm not trying to indicate, by the way, right now, and we'll go into this a lot more after lunch. I'm kind of trying to make sure I give some opportunities before you have to go. I'm not trying to suggest anything about what icon's going to do what little picture's the right thing to be indicative of this approach or that approach to representation or reference. But rather, if you looked at everything that's going on the screen, the ability to travel in reference space or representation space or numerous other things we're not going to get a chance to get into before lunch, as placeholders, they're just stand-ins. What we're really evolving is a relationship. We're saying, what is the kind of interface that somebody could relate through in order to take whatever's in front of them, the learning materials that are in front of them, and travel through whatever the representation is at the moment to home at any one of the points that might cause uncertainty or curiosity fluctuations in them. Or, assuming that they didn't have any problems with the elements in a representation. I may be using some language that's clumsy at this level, and perhaps we can go into that a little bit after lunch. Then they can switch the representation. They can change what's the lens that's allowing them to come to the essential meaning that we're dealing with respect to where they are, at a database level, at a free inquiry level, or at a courseware level. And we'll talk about that.